it is finally time once again to get into the SEC preview and tier list. It's been a long time, Tyler. It's almost been like a whole year since we've done one of these. It's kind of hard to think about. The last time
Ah,
we did this, we recorded at like 11 o'clock at night. Our brains were barely functioning. We're not doing that again. Maybe we can actually be semi accurate this time, I hope. But you look at the six
right,
tiers we
clear.
have, pretty good, I think. I think this is sorted out about as well as you can. Some people might think I'm being a little too nitpicky. Maybe, maybe not. We'll start at pain. You don't want to be in pain. That's 0 to 2 wins. This is total wins. This isn't conference wins. We have bad at 3 to 4. Average is 5 to 6. Good is 7 to 8. Great is 9 to 10. And college football playoff, if you win 11 or 12 games, you're going to be in the college football playoff. I don't care what anyone says. An 11 or 12 win, an 11 or undefeated SEC team is making the college football playoff. It doesn't matter who it is, even if Mississippi State somehow did it. So
Sure.
let's start with the number one team going by preseason poll rankings. These are not my rankings. This is the official SEC media preseason poll. Let's start with the number one team, and that is Texas. You look at Texas's schedule, and you can see right off the gate that big game against Ohio State. That's the one that everyone's been glaring at. And then you look at Florida, OU back to back at Georgia. Of course, is looming November 15th. You get A&M at home on Black Friday. You have Arkansas before that. Your back to back rivalry games there. Those are the key points in Texas's schedule. Steve Sarkisian, what a job he's done. It's his 5th year this year with the Longhorns. Year one that they lost at home to Kansas. Year 5, and they're the preseason number one team in the country, or expected to be the preseason number one team in the country. And they have Arch Manning back at quarterback. When you have that last name Manning, you're probably going to be pretty good. We're going to see how that plays out throughout the year. You've had the hype, now you have the hate. We're going to see how that all plays out. And a lot of people want to think that this is a Texas team that's going to ride or die with Arch Manning. You're going to see some people try to throw that out there. Do not buy that. Do not buy that for a second. Texas is going to have a lot of help. This is not just going to be an Arch Manning does everything type of team. There's no way. Let's look at running back. CJ Baxter's finally back. 2023 had a good season, out all of 2024 last year with injury. You get him back with Contravion Wisner, who's insane at times last year. Really helped Texas when he needed to. Still going to have some receivers back, have shown some upside. Ryan Wingo, DeAndre Moore Jr. You're going to have some weapons for Arch to work with. And again, this isn't even taking into account if Arch is going to be what we think he is or just a good quarterback. I'm not even taking that into account yet, Tyler. You look at Jack injuries at tight end. I love talking about the offense for Texas. And this is going to be a good O line as well. DJ Campbell, you're going to have him. Trevor Gooseby. Those are some guys that were getting some SEC recognition, SEC teams. And this is going to be a great defense as well. I hate having to give Texas
Oh,
for credit
yeah.
for anything as an OU fan. You'll always hear me say that. I hate giving a rival credit for anything, but you have to. This is a well put together Texas team. Colin Simmons on the defensive line, Anthony Hill Jr. linebacker. I have to have an entire sheet to list all the players Texas has that I want to talk about here. They have so many that I will forget about someone, and that will be sad. Malik Muhammad, Trey Moore. You've got defensive guys all over. Michael Taff, who I really want to call Taffy because I think that would be an amazing last name if he wanted to go with it. This is a Texas team that is built to win a national title. And if Arch Manning is as good as everyone wants to believe he can be, if he reaches that level of hype that so many people want him to get to, I don't want to say this is an unstoppable Texas team because any team in college football can be beaten. But this is a Texas team that I think for the first time in a long time, similar to last year, you made the semis last year. If they don't make that push here, I don't know when they make that push.
Yeah. Well, and I think you highlighted all the big key players exactly right. I mean, they are stacked just about everywhere, whether it be offensively or defensively. The reason why everybody's putting the whole it's ride or die on Arch is because this team, if you plug any quarterback in that is halfway decent, should be able to succeed. You look at Quinn Ewers last year, you say, well, maybe he wasn't, as good as Manning at times, but yours was still a 23-6 touchdown ratio there. Yes, over the last stretch of games, he wasn't the best. Still threw for nearly 3,500 yards despite the injuries. So if you get similar production to that with Arch, and the fact that Arch, I think we could all agree upon, is a bit more mobile than what Quinn Ewers was. Cade, I mean, this is a recipe for a team that can be really, really explosive on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and this is one of those that I know we talked about this a little bit, that Ohio State game. We're gonna learn a lot from that game, but we're not gonna learn everything. And that's what I love about that game being week one. Is Texas, you're gonna look at. They're gonna have 4 weeks where essentially, I don't want to say nothing's going to happen. But San Jose State, UTEP, Sam Houston, and then a bye week, that doesn't really scare me that much if I was a Texas fan. I've seen some people throwing around, the nightmare scenario of what happened. Josh Pate, I know, had mentioned this, some other guys as well, where, what happens if Texas loses at Florida and then, they stumble there and you're 3-2 going into the Cotton Bowl, going into Red River, where that game, you never know what's going to happen in that game. Everyone has told you that. If you're an OU or Texas fan, you know that, obviously. And the nightmare scenario of, oh no, what if you're 3-3 somehow coming out of that? And you still have to go to Athens late in November. You still have to play Arkansas and A&M, which will be tougher than it needs to be, more than likely. That's just how rivalry games work. But I don't see that for Texas. I think having that bye week before Florida is insanely good scheduling wise for Texas. Having that week to not have to think about what's looming. And I think Sark's really good about that as well. He's not going to get them overlooking to that OU game. He's not one of those guys that he's not a Tom Herman. Let's just say that, where he's going to get up for the big games and you're going to forget about every other game. He's not that type of coach. I think that's been perfectly clear. Having a bye before going to Georgia helps as well. I wouldn't say that's the most brutal stretch. Arkansas, I'll have my opinions on Arkansas. Texas A&M being at home, I think, will be, of course, a plus as well. This is a Texas team that, Tyler, if we want to put them in a tier, I think, Ohio State, if you want to give them that loss, I think you split them with Ohio State and Georgia just to be safe. I like this Texas team in the college football playoff tier as an 11 or 12 win team. I think they can make it back to Atlanta. Not going to call them to win the SEC in this video, but I think they can definitely make it back to Atlanta.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know if 12's in the works because I,
Yeah.
I think in the new age of college football, to be quite honest, if you're going undefeated in the regular season, you are a historic team. Because with the way depth has changed and all that, the top level of these programs, I think it's going to be increasingly harder to be undefeated in the regular season. That being said, I think 11 wins is probably the sweet spot. I agree with you. Most likely, you split Ohio State, Georgia. That's probably where the loss comes from. Maybe 10-2. Maybe you
Yeah.
fall against Ohio State and Georgia, since both those games, are not necessarily at home. Um, but the worst, the absolute worst case I can see for this Texas team, if everything falls apart, is 8-4. I mean, and even then, that's a
That
stretch. That
feels
means
like
you
that
probably
takes
lose two.
catastrophic, a lot of
Yeah, and
injuries,
yeah,
something
you're
bad
losing to Ohio
happens.
State, Florida, OU, and Georgia.
Yeah.
Probably in those four, if that's the case, and that's again catastrophic to your point. So there's no reason this Texas team cannot be in the playoffs. It would take injuries or Arch Manning just not being it for that to happen. I'm with you. 11 wins is probably the sweet spot for me.
And then we get to Georgia. Number 2 overall in the preseason poll, SEC champion last year, college football playoff quarterfinalist. It feels so weird to say, we got to add the first round of quarterfinals. It's a good thing. Again, let me stop myself before I start rambling. 10 years now for Kirby Smart. We can talk about it like we did with Sark. Kirby Smart took over from Mark Richt, one of the nicest guys in college football, but could never get over the hump. Georgia's consistently gotten there now. This was a Georgia team that, we'll get into it here in a moment. You look at the schedule for Georgia. Marshall and Austin Peay to start the year. You would think that's 2 wins. You go to Tennessee early, bye week, and then Alabama at home. You also get Ole Miss at home this year. You go to Auburn. We know that can be a weird thing. It just is. Auburn on the road is always going to be a weird game. That's just nature in the SEC. Florida, of course, on November 1st. You get Texas at home. You play Georgia Tech in whatever the heck an Invesco QQQ Atlanta Gridiron Classic is. I don't know what that is. It's clean old fashioned hate to me. But this is a Georgia team that a lot of people kind of think, and this is where the first time I'm going to say this video, this will not be the last time. How good is your quarterback actually? Because Gunnar Stockton is going to have a lot of pressure on him. He'll have some weapons. Oscar Delp at tight end, Nate Frazier at running back, some guys that were on some SEC teams as well. Of course, the big one, big transfer, Zachariah Branch. Not the only Branch coming over from USC, but you talk about not just him as a receiver, an amazing return man as well. That's going to help a lot. Georgia's going to have some good special teams this year. If I wanted to list special teams, Georgia cleaned up in the special teams category of SEC media days. They really did. It was all Georgia all the way down, except for maybe one or two spots there. But Georgia, of course, you think about Kirby Smart, you think of the defense and the help they're going to have there. Christian Miller on the D line, C.J. Allen at linebacker, K.J. Bolden and Dalen Everett. Georgia's going to have defenders. When are they not going to have defenders under Kirby Smart? This is a Georgia team that, you want to talk about Tennessee, Alabama, Ole Miss, Florida, Texas. Those are their 5 big games if you go by ranking. Ole Miss, Florida, I like them to win those games. Tennessee is going to be a weird situation that early in the year when I think Tennessee's still trying to figure themselves out. Georgia will too a little bit, but I like Georgia to kind of be in that situation similar to Texas where a lot of people don't know how to feel about the Dogs this year, but they know they'll be good. We don't know what that'll look like altogether, but we know it should be a good football team. I think with Alabama and Texas, you split the difference there. And Tyler, I like Georgia to be in that same tier as Texas. I think Georgia's an 11-1 team. I really think they are. They were 11-3 last year. You had some of that inconsistency on offense. I think Gunnar Stockton's a different kind of quarterback, kind of more of a, going to make his mind. He's not going to go 3 picks in a game like Carson Beck did. I don't think he's that type of quarterback. I like Georgia to be a little bit more simpler on offense, and I think that helps a lot, and that defense gets going like it always does.
Yeah, I mean the defense. When you look at it and you laid it out right, the proper question is Kirby Smart. When is he not going to have guys that can play defense?
I don't know. It might. The
offense,
universe might explode before that happens.
Probably will. But on that offense, Gunnar Stockton, here's the key for him. If he could just be less chaotic, which is kind of the point you're making about, he's different than Carson Beck. Carson Beck at times could be a great quarterback, but other times you're just looking around going, what are you doing? Gunnar Stockton's smart. He's throwing a lot to Zachariah Branch, Oscar Delp, and get Nate Frazier out of the backfield, right? And if Frazier could take another leap, remember, he's a true sophomore. As a freshman last year, had a pretty good season in the SEC, all factors considered. Um, so if he could make another leap, oh my goodness, that is a huge stabilizing factor for the Georgia offense. The real question I have with this team, and this kind of falls into the category with a couple of SEC teams, is that O-line. They returned some experience. You got Ernest Green's probably the big guy, the right tackle, in terms of what he could do and leading that unit. But the guys that they returned, while they have some experience, it's not near what they've had in the past, right? So, in terms of returning games, things of that nature, it's guys who've been around but maybe haven't quite solidified themselves. So, if they could do that early and with the schedule you're laying out, they can. I think, those games against Marshall, Austin P, even against Tennessee, to be honest. I mean, that's your first road test. That's not the worst one to have out of that schedule. So um, I would say Georgia, 11 wins, probably. I'm a little bit more maybe in the camp of 10-2 because I could see losing to Texas and then maybe the Alabama game or the Auburn game, like you're talking about, going a little funky. But definitely a playoff team. I believe Gunnar Stockton, while he may not be electric, should be enough to get the Dogs over the top into the playoffs.
And that's who Georgia has been. I don't think anyone would have. I don't think anyone would have qualified Stetson Bennett as one of the most electric quarterbacks in football.
Right.
But it didn't matter because he had all the talent in the world around him. He just had to do one thing, and that was not make a giant mistake. I think Georgia gets back to that winning formula again. Now we have to get to Alabama. Tyler, the last time Alabama didn't win 10 games in a season, I was not very old. I don't even remember how old I was the last time Alabama didn't win 10 games in a season. I can say that now I was at a game where I was in the end zone more times than Alabama. Never thought I'd say that in my life either. But Kalen DeBoer, year two, he gets his offensive coordinator of choice. He gets Grubb back. Last time they were together, Washington was in the national championship game. But there's no Michael Penix Jr. to save him this time. It's up to Ty Simpson, dual threat quarterback. A little bit of a different type, obviously, compared to Penix. And you look at Alabama's schedule, and Florida State awaits them week one. Is that a problem for Alabama? I really don't think so. Other years, I'd be talking about that's a big game. Alabama, instant worry, week one. If things go wrong, they could go wrong. I'm gonna spoil it right now. I don't know how good Florida State's gonna be, but I can tell you they're not gonna be beating Alabama worthy of good. Because Tyler, this is kind of how I felt about Alabama last year. This is kind of how I'm gonna feel about him this year. Ty Simpson does not have to be amazing every single week for Alabama to just talent their way to wins. It's going to hurt them against a Georgia. It might hurt them against an LSU or a South Carolina on the road. It might hurt them against Tennessee a bit. It might even hurt them against Vandy a bit. Who knows? But Alabama has some guy named Ryan Williams. I heard he was 17 last year, too many times to count.
Yeah.
He's back. Get ready to hear about how he's 18 now this year. Caden Proctor on the offensive line. Jaden Roberts also on the offensive line. Parker Brailsford at center. Alabama's going to have one of the best offensive lines, not just in the SEC, I think, but college football in general. They have Jam Miller able to run behind that as well. If Alabama can get that running ability really rolling again, it should open up Ryan Williams some. And we haven't even gotten to the defense that Alabama's going to have. They return quite a bit. They're going to have, they'll have some pieces in here that are new, but talk about Tim Keenan the third, LT Overton on the defensive line, Deontay Lawson at linebacker, Damani Jackson, Keon Sabb, Bray Hubbard, who are all defensive backs, Jeremy Bernard, the senior receiver, were coming back for Bama. Alabama's going to have weapons. They're going to have talent still. This is not a Alabama's going to look like the same team that got beaten up by OU and Michigan, two teams that really didn't have offenses at the end of the year, where Alabama kind of just let the other team do whatever they wanted while they sat there and forgot what an offense was. This is an Alabama team that is going to be back to, I don't want to say the Saban dominance over everybody. I think that's not coming back for a long, long time. But you look at it, I think they should be 3-0 going into the Georgia game. I don't know if they can win that one in Athens, but we'll see if Georgia can beat Alabama, if Kirby can get that win at home with everything on the line. But at Missouri doesn't really scare me if I'm Alabama. Eastern Illinois to end the year, shout out Cupcake Week. Iron Bowl in Auburn at Jordan Hare is always going to be weird. Again, that's just a fact of life you have to accept. Can Jackson Arnold beat Alabama a second year in a row? We'll have to find out. You get LSU at home, you get Oklahoma at home, Tennessee's at home. Most of the games that you kind of want, you're going to get. South Carolina, Georgia, of course, notwithstanding Iron Bowl, unfortunately for Alabama. You got to play that every other year there. But Alabama's, I don't know, Tyler. I don't know how you feel about them, but I feel like they're still going to be pretty good. I mean, I don't see much of a drop off really further than 9 wins again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably in the camp of 9-3, and really for me, there's no reason they shouldn't get rolled into that Tennessee game any worse than one loss, right?
Exactly.
Like you probably lose to Georgia. That's take your lumps early in the season. If you can pull that off, great, it's gravy. But even if you lose that game, it's that stretch of Tennessee, South Carolina, LSU, and Oklahoma that's really going to make or break your season. Could you drop one of those? Very possible. Could you win all those? Maybe. I don't know if I'm going to go full camp of that in terms of, hey, they're going to skate their way to the Auburn game, one loss. Probably not, because as good as some of the pieces they're bringing back, and let me make this point too, this team's going to be hungry, right? This
They
is
are.
a level of hunger that you haven't seen Alabama have in a long time, even under Saban, just simply because everybody's booing them, right? I mean, these fans, this fan base, this is probably the most hostile it's been for a while. They're still going to love their Tide, but there's a lot less trust all of a sudden, right? So they want to get out there and prove that, hey, we are still that program. We're still that type of dominant program. That being said, I think 9-3 is pretty solid. I could see that, and that would put them right in the playoff contention again. Um, if things go right, you may be looking at 11-1 Alabama. I think 9-3 is a little bit more safer at this point in the season.
And I would agree with that. I personally have Alabama 10-2. Either way, that still qualifies them as a great type of team, 9 or 10 wins. I think also, you mentioned that hunger that Alabama's going to have, and they were not 1 or 2 in the preseason poll last year. But when is the last time we've gone into a season where everyone's just kind of like, and then there's Alabama? We don't say
Right.
that ever about the S. At least in my time growing up, we don't say that about. And then there's Alabama. They're the third best team. There's someone else that's better than Alabama, and then there's another team that's also better than Alabama. That doesn't happen
You know
very
what's real
often.
what's real crazy, Cade? I guess I can catch up a little bit on this. I kind of went through and personally ranked my teams. And it's not where I think they'll finish. It's just coming into the season where I'd power rank them. Georgia slightly over Texas in my eyes, but they'd be 1A, 1B, right? I had Alabama at 5 because
Oof.
of that exact point you're talking about. And that's not saying they're a bad team, but it's, oh, there's this team, this team, this team, and this team that all intrigue me. And then it's Alabama, right? You can't put them really any lower than that. And it's probably a sin to put them lower than 3 in most people's eyes. And I get it. But there's just too many question marks.
There are, and that's what it is. And I said it about Georgia. I'll say it again about Alabama. The talent's all going to be there. It just comes down to how good is Ty Simpson going to be, or if he gets benched and you switch it around and have to play musical chairs at quarterback. Sometimes that can save the day. Sometimes that makes the problem worse. Moore gets his OC back. I would think Alabama bounces back and improves a little bit, but how deep the SEC is at the top, we had this problem last year. Tyler, you said, Cade, there won't be 8 teams that are ranked or something like that. And you were right. There were only 7 at the end of the year, but there were
Yeah.
still a lot. The SEC was like that, and it's not going to get any easier when we talk about LSU. Number 4 in the preseason poll, can Brian Kelly finally win an opening game? Can he finally do it? He's 0-3 in season openers. It's not going to get easier for LSU. They go to Death Valley. No, not that one, the other one. The one in South Carolina, not the one at home. Take on Clemson. Saturday night football. Great way to start the year. They've got Florida in September. They go to Ole Miss for the Magnolia Bowl in September. South Carolina right after a bye week. A&M at home, at Bama, at OU to end the year. Arkansas right after going to Bama, by the way. You throw the golden boot in there and things could get wild. But LSU, here we go again. Gonna ask the same question, but you kind of know the answer this time. How good is Garrett Nussmeier going to be? It's a lot easier to answer than how good is Ty Simpson going to be, or maybe even how good is Gunnar Stockton going to be.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Garrett Nussmeier, if you look at some people's rankings, they consider him the guy, the top quarterback in the SEC coming into the season, at least based on what has been done, right? That kind of goes to your point, like we were talking about in the preseason coaches poll that, hey, John, Mateer's great for OU. It's a great pickup, but we haven't seen him against SEC competition. We know Garrett Nussmeier can produce against SEC competition. So on that offense, it's him, it's receiver Aaron Anderson. That could be a huge lethal combo for that team if it goes right. And then you got Caden Durham to throw in at running back should help kind of complete that. Really, Cade, I think when it comes to LSU, it's not how far Garrett Nussmeier can take him this season. The question for me is how far can they go in the trenches? Because as a victim of their own
Well, it appears we've lost Tyler
success,
for a moment here,
they
and
have
now
to
he's
rely
back. There we go. Once it,
get drafted. Now I'm back.
now you're back.
Anyways, as I was saying, in the trenches is the big question for him with LSU. Both sides. You had a plethora of offensive linemen be drafted this past year. Defensively, your defensive linemen have been so good in the past few years, as they traditionally have at LSU, that you're kind of barren there a little bit. Last year, it was a bit of a patchwork situation. It worked all right, but you're back in the same spot this year. Haven't been able to really build that depth. So it's not how far Garrett Nussmeier is going to take the Tigers. It's how are those big boys going to carry the Tigers for me? That's the interesting question. That all said, Cade, when I power rank it, because of Garrett Nussmeier, I do have LSU number 3. So
And that's where the intrigue comes in because you're worried about the trenches. I'm worried about what LSU's defense is going to look like. We got to remember 2 years ago, I was going through Bill Conley's strength and power rankings. This was an LSU team that was in the 50s, which for an SEC team is not very good at all. Last year it was in the 30s. You saw that improvement. Harold Perkins, he should be healthy this year. We know with the monster numbers he can put up if he can stay healthy. You have one of the best linebackers in the SEC at your disposal. You've got another great one in Whit Weeks. Nick Anderson, transfer from OU. I'm maybe the number one Nick Anderson supporter. I don't know. I loved him a lot at OU. I hope he continues to do good things at LSU. I think if he stays healthy, he can. We will not mention the other OU transfer that went to LSU. I do not speak of his name. But LSU is one of those teams that, 9-4 last year, but it felt like there could have been more. And that feels like a lot of Brian Kelly teams, to be honest with you. I would not be shocked if LSU loses again to start the year. We have this same conundrum of, okay, how good is LSU really going to be? They get a resounding win over Florida. They can beat Ole Miss. You get a bye week before South Carolina, which they're the next team we're going to talk about. I think that helps a lot. You start to string these big wins together. A&M, I think that's another one they could take care of. The bye week before Alabama helps a lot. It really does. You have that whole week to get up for that game. You go to Tuscaloosa. Arkansas right after. Arkansas, one of the chaotic teams, of course. LSU fans know that already. I'm telling you nothing new. At OU to end the year could be a weird game because Oklahoma's done this the past few years under Brent Venables. They always seem to have one insanely good game in November where they go up and beat someone or play above their level they have most of the year. That's just become a trend for OU. This is an LSU team that I think they lose to Clemson to start the year, but week 1 LSU and week 13 LSU are going to look like completely different teams. I think they drop another game at some point, but I really do like LSU as a 10-win team in that great tier. I think they're right there with Alabama. I think they're on paper going to be better than Alabama just because of what Garrett Nussmeier could do. I like him right now because he is more proven. Like you said, Tyler, I think Alabama's the more complete team, but I think LSU has the more experience, if you will.
Yeah, and really, you mentioned that defense. You've got on top of Harold Perkins, Whit Weeks. So that linebacking core could be, arguably the best in the conference, if not one of the best. And in the secondary, you got some experience there. So I'm not as worried about that defense. That being said, the schedule for them, I think, lays out well, right? You went over those points very well. It's really, can you? I think you lose that Clemson game. I mean, if you pull that upset off, amazing. You're way ahead of schedule. But really, after that, it sets up well for you to, hey, if you drop the Alabama game, you still pretty easily achieve that 10-2 mark. Even if it goes beyond that, maybe you drop it to Oklahoma, maybe you lose to South Carolina, right, or Florida. It's hard to see this LSU team slipping below 9 wins. You really have to get in disaster territory. So I don't know if I'm 10 wins with them, but I'd say solidly 9. Um, should give them that type of edge. So I go 9 wins for LSU this year.
I think they'll be one of those teams once again that if they beat Clemson week 1, this entire conversation is pointless. It turns into, okay, LSU's the real deal. If they win week 1 and go on the road and beat Clemson, this turns into an entire different beast that we're looking at, and you should be very afraid of what LSU might be able to do. But the next team we've got to get to, this is where we start to what I like to call the untapped potential category, because South Carolina is put at number 5, 5th year for Shane Beamer, 9-4 last year. South Carolina's record, lost the Citrus Bowl. Illinois, one of the most intense 2 or 3 minutes I think I've ever seen in a bowl game. Lenore Sellers. That's all you need to really know about South Carolina. That's all you're going to hear about South Carolina is Lenore Sellers and how great he's going to be. What you don't hear about is everything else on South Carolina's offense. They're going to have Rashul Fison from Utah State. Good running back that transferred in. He's going to be able to do some damage. But I think the question everyone really has for South Carolina, you look at that trench battle. You look at what is this defense going to look like. South Carolina's defense last year, we talked about it how many times, where it can make big play after big play, stand up and help that offense get some room to breathe. You still have Dylan Stewart and Jalen Kilgore. You're still going to have guys. This defense didn't entirely vanish overnight. And the schedule looks favorable to start the year. Your toughest game before the bye week at LSU, I would say, is Vanderbilt at home. I don't think it's Kentucky. I don't think it's Virginia Tech at a neutral site. I don't think it's at Missouri even this year. It might be Vanderbilt at home. I think they should be 5-0 with a bye week going to LSU. But you look at that back half for South Carolina at LSU, OU, Alabama, at Ole Miss, bye week at A&M, then Coastal, before you get to the Palmetto Bowl at the end of the year, which is at home this year. That's a big advantage. But man, does South Carolina have their work cut out for them again.
Oh, there's no question about it. And really, we talk about all the coverage when it comes to Texas. Pressure is truly on Lenore Sellers, because if he's not going, their offense isn't going. They've got pieces around him. Nick Harbors, we did touch on him. I mean, that's a guy, golly, what an athletic freak he can be at times, and just a special player when he gets rolling. But Lenore Sellers has to make it go. That's a lot of pressure for a sophomore. Um, and then that D line, you talk about the trenches. They lose. I mean, Cade, we saw it firsthand against OU. That D line was disgusting. And you lose a lot of those guys, right? But do you have enough to kind of keep it together where you're probably not going to be one of the best D lines in the country anymore? But if you could just keep that pressure rolling enough and provide that support like you're talking about, it's huge. And you look at the schedule, I mean, 9 wins last year sits up a little, I say a little tougher. It sits up mildly tougher. I mean, that LSU trip is going to be tough. Oklahoma, Alabama, that stretch right there, once you get to that LSU game, is really, like you're talking about, that back half of the schedule is where you prove it. Oh, what are we thinking? 8-win team here, probably. I mean, that leaves you some wiggle room to falter in that back half of the schedule. In my mind, I could very easily see a world where South Carolina starts really strong, but you kind of turn it into a meh team down the stretch.
And
Top
that's
25 team, maybe not playoffs.
and that's unfortunately where I think South Carolina is going to go. I want to believe this team can be destined for greater things. If you took this year's Lenore Sellers with last year's team, I think they make the playoffs. I think that's pretty simple to say. I think they were a playoff team. It just didn't line up 100%. And I think LSU being as good as they're going to be, I think Alabama being a bit hungrier this year. You add in some of those other games. I think it's a 5-0 start for South Carolina. Things get a little rockier down the stretch. I want to believe this is a 9-win team, but I just cannot in good conscience say that it is. I'll be an 8-4 South Carolina, a good, should be great, but schedule makes them good type team. And I hate doing that. I hate that argument of having to base a team off a schedule and not off their talent, but that's where we are.
Yep. No, I agree.
It's just, I don't like it. And we're going to talk about it again with the next team because it's Florida. Stop me if you've heard this before. A quarterback that has looked good and has showed signs of potential, this time it's DJ Lagway, with a schedule that is absolutely designed to be a murderer's row, the second toughest strength of schedule in America, if you believe ESPN at all. At LSU, at Miami, you get a bye week, and that's nice, but then Texas and at A&M. You get another bye week after Mississippi State. Georgia, at Kentucky, you sneak at Kentucky and Ole Miss in there, and then Tennessee and Florida State. That's a tough schedule. It's 3 teams that we've already talked about that are going to be pretty darn good in Georgia, Texas, and LSU. You throw Miami in there, they're going to be wanting to make another big statement. A&M on the road, not going to be the prettiest if Mike Elko can get his team up for that. Ole Miss will be a little bit, they'll want some revenge for how last year went. Tennessee's going to be, we'll know what Tennessee looks like at the end of the year. And of course, you can never rule out Florida State trying to sneak in an upset, I think, towards the end of the year. Florida's another one of those weird teams that, it's not just DJ Lagway. I don't want to give you the impression, once again, that's one guy trying to carry a team. Florida's going to have a good offensive line. Jake Slaughter at center. He's going to be good for him. Austin Barber. Lagway's going to have some protection. He's not going to be running for his life out there. Caleb Banks on the defensive line, but Tyreek sat by him. Florida will have some talent there. Jaden Baugh is going to be a fun running back. Eugene Wilson, the third wide receiver. Florida will have some pieces. This isn't just a one-man show, but it feels like we just talked about the same team twice, Tyler, does it not? Really good quarterback. A lot of people believe they can be great, but just how far can they go with that brutal of a schedule. But unlike South Carolina, their ramp up is 2 games instead of what feels like 3 or 4.
Yeah, you get that's a big issue, right? You get far less time compared to South Carolina to really figure out if DJ Lagway, similar to Sellers, is truly that guy or not. Because that road trip to LSU is not going to be fun. They got to turn around and face Miami. And, oh, I mean, what a stretch! You mentioned it. You don't really dodge any of the big contenders: Texas, Georgia, LSU. The only one you really dodge is Alabama. And it's just like this is a murder's row. Uh, if Lagway's legit, I could definitely see a world where Florida finds themselves pushing for 9-3. You're not winning the Texas game, I don't think. You're not winning the Georgia game. But of the rest of that schedule, you could allow yourself, probably the loss against LSU is most likely. You could beat Miami, I think, based off what they have now. I'll get to that in the ACC video when we get there. And then the back half, Kentucky, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Florida State all have huge question marks. So if you could have enough to get past everybody except Georgia, uh, Texas, and LSU, could be looking at a 9-win Florida team. That being said, that's best case scenario in my mind. Even if Flagway's legit, do you really have enough around him to get past those other big time teams? I don't think so. Okay, I think at best this Florida team's 9-3. I'm leaning more towards the 8-4 mark.
And that's where I look at him. And that I think LSU, Texas, and Georgia, those are your 3 losses. I think those are, we both agree, even in the best case scenario, you're probably losing those 3. I think Texas is maybe the most beatable because that is at home. I guess if we're going to pick one of the most beatable. But just, you look at that, and I think of at Ole Miss and Tennessee and Florida State, that 3-game stretch there at the end. I think of having to go to A&M right after a game against Texas. That just feels too ripe for Florida to lose at least one of those, if not 2 of those games. I think Florida, again, I would like to see them be great, but I can't just believe it with how difficult that schedule is going to be. I can say the same thing again, and I think I will. I don't like having to base a team off a schedule and not their actual talent, but here we are again. Please fix your scheduling, SEC. This is ridiculous. Please stop punishing teams for existing. What did Florida do specifically? Well, I mean, I know what Florida did, but what did Florida do specifically? What'd you say there, Tyler? I know you said something. I was talking over you.
I was saying bring back divisions, please.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Some people might not want that now, but
go to pods.
Yeah, something. But Ole Miss is number 7, Lane Kiffin year number 6, 10-win team last year were the Rebels. Gator Bowl champions absolutely obliterated Duke. And Ole Miss, here we go. 3rd time in a row I'm going to say this. How good is your quarterback? This time it's Austin Simmons we're talking about. He has Deshaun Stribling, Oklahoma State transfer, going to be great. Harrison Wallace III, Penn State transfer. Damian Taylor, running back from Troy. Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin, he's going to find the way to find that offensive talent, bring it in through the portal. And Ole Miss, the defense is kind of what it seems like they might be relying on a little bit more this year. Suntarine Perkins, linebacker. Xavier Harris on the defensive line. Princewell Umanmian. What a great name. First of all first name team, transfer from Nebraska. I mean, he's got a brother in the or a relative in the NFL. I shouldn't say brother. I didn't research that in Prince Lee. But Ole Miss, another one of those teams that it feels like how good is your quarterback going to be is how good your team is going to be. You look at the first 3 weeks of Ole Miss's schedule to go, okay, Georgia State, Kentucky, Arkansas, 3-0, the momentum's building, and then you get to Tulane, which had we talked about this a few months ago, I would have said, okay, 4-0 probably, but now Tulane's going to be a little bit weird. They get Retzlaff from BYU. That Tulane team could start to look a little bit different by the time they throw down. And if you're 4-0, you get LSU at home. Now, it's at home. Will probably be a night game. Or not a night game, I should say, but it will be a big deal game for Ole Miss, of course. Then you have a bye week. Washington State, that's winnable. That's at least 5, you would think. But then Georgia and OU back-to-back on the road, then South Carolina. Just a nice little brutal stretch in there for the Rebels to have to deal with. You get somewhat of a break with Citadel. Triple option teams are never fun. before getting Florida, bye week, and another bye week in Mississippi State. I'm just going to make my
Ooh,
feelings known on
ooh.
Mississippi State. I'm sorry. There's a reason I'm setting that up. But this is an Ole Miss team that I don't know how good they're going to be. And that feels weird to say because last year they were the exact opposite. We knew what they had, we knew what they were going to be. You felt comfortable in saying Ole Miss was going to be the real deal and they could be pretty darn good. This year, complete polar opposite. I'm not really going to know how good they can be until they throw down against a team from Louisiana.
Yeah, I think the funny part, this is how I'm going to describe this year for Ole Miss. Okay,
Okay.
you're going to see some promise in there. You're going to see some things. You're like, yeah, maybe Lane Kiffin could keep this thing rolling. But I think this is a perfect year for Lane Kiffin to go, look, boosters, we are really close to being a top-notch program. Just need a couple more guys, and we could have won. You know, maybe that Oklahoma game, maybe that South Carolina game, maybe that. This
Yeah.
feels like about a 7-5 year for Ole Miss. Maybe you go 8-4. You lose to OU, Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, and maybe beat LSU or one of those five that you're not supposed to probably. But I feel this is about that 7-5 year for Lane Kiffin, where again they show, hey, you know what? We're not just a farce, but we're just a little bit away from being a really good team, a really good program. And Lane kind of uses that to say, hey, just need a little bit more support there, boosters, a little bit more money.
Just a little bit more. Just let him do a little bit more trolling online and give him a little
Sure.
bit more money, and we'll see what Ole Miss can try to be a playoff contender again next year because LSU, Georgia, pick one of OU and South Carolina and Florida, or pick two of OU, South Carolina and Florida. And I feel like those are losses. I feel like Ole Miss is trapped in that same category of good. This feels a little bit different than last year. Last year we had the build up in the great category. This year the build up I can already see it starting to pile up in that good tier. Everyone's going to be a 7 or 8 win team and just mesh together. And that's how the SEC rolls now. When you have 16
It does.
teams, you're going to get a whole lot of concentrated good, maybe a little bit spread out great in college football playoff tier, and maybe spread out a little average as well. But Ole Miss just
And
I don't know what to think of them. I really don't. It feels weird to say
I,
that.
yeah, no, and I do think of the teams, for reference, I've got them 10 in my power rankings, kind of middle of the road, a little bit below that. Teams we talked about so far, they're definitely the biggest candidate of, hey, if things don't go right early, maybe Kentucky somehow pulls off the miracle there, or Arkansas does it, or Tulane, right? You could see Ole Miss quickly slide into a 6-1 team. So that's kind of what I'm not going to say as far as they will slide to that, but I feel their ceiling is 8-4, whereas a lot of those other teams we talked about, disaster is 8-4 for them.
I do feel there is a way Ole Miss could get to 9-3 if Austin Simmons just balls out and becomes the real deal halfway during the season. Maybe you steal another game or two that you shouldn't out of that Georgia, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Florida stretch. I can see that being a possibility, or maybe you ride the momentum and give LSU an unexpected loss. I don't know, but I just don't see it in the cards for this year's Ole Miss team. And now we get to move to right in the middle, Texas A&M, year 2 for Mike Elko, 8-5 last year. Insert whatever Texas A&M goes 8-5 again joke you have here. We're all gonna laugh. We're all gonna think it's funny. Don't worry, it's very original, I'm sure. Texas A&M, great offensive line that they've got. Armaj Reed, or Adams, Trezun III, Chase Bisontis, or Bisontis. I would like to think it's Bisontis. I'm not gonna. I butcher names regularly. I'm sorry. Le'Veon Moss is back at running back. Casey Conception transferring in from NC State at receiver. Amari Daniels, of course, also back at running back. Marcel Reed, who I thought was turning into one of those breakout guys last year before I cursed them before they played South Carolina. I apologize for
Hey,
that.
he looked like the part for a
He
minute. There's
did.
no doubt.
He started to turn into that guy where we had that conversation about how good Texas A&M could really be, and then they reverted back to 8-5. And they're going to be great defensively as well. That's what Mike Elko does. Torian York at linebacker, Will Lee the third defensive back. The pieces are there for Texas A&M to make a run. The pieces are there, is what we've said about every other SEC team up to this point as well, though. And you go to Notre Dame in your third game of the year, but you get Florida at home. You get Auburn at home. You get Mississippi State. You go to Arkansas and then go to LSU. You have your bye week there November 1st. Schedule feels a bit favorable for A&M in pieces, but Notre Dame, LSU, Texas, all on the road. They're spread out enough to where it's not a true murderer's row, but it's still enough to give you concern for A&M.
Yeah, it's still enough for them to easily slide back to a 7-5 type year, or to an 8-4 year. And that's kind of the part where, Cade, you go to those, you've seen it in TV series and movies where, they think they have a cure for the monster, right? The monster starts to de-transform or whatever, and then it just reverts back. It feels like Mike all goes in that phase with this team where they're trying really hard to break the old ways, what they used to be under Jimbo Fisher, where hey, there's a lot of promise, there's a lot of highly touted going on, but it just doesn't materialize. So can he break that spell? Can he get out of that rut with this team? And unfortunately, as we stand here today on August 5th, at time of recording, I don't think we could definitively answer that. As you've laid out, there's talent there. We know it's there. We're seeing it in flashes. But the schedule's got enough big teams on it in weird spots where are you confident to say they could be a 9-1 team? I could make a case for it. I mean, you could lose that LSU Texas those games. You lose Notre Dame, and I would say you got a shot against the rest, right? But it feels like 9 wins is the ceiling. More likely, this is probably another 8-win team for Texas A&M.
Tyler, we need to talk about your analogy of the monster that reverts back and then turns back into a monster, because here's what I feel like for A&M. Win over UTSA and Utah State, lose to Notre Dame, 2-1. That's kind of what you expect out of that. I think A&M blazes out of the bye week, beats Auburn, Mississippi State. I want to say they beat one of Florida or South Carolina. I'll just say that right now. I think they beat
I think that's fair.
Arkansas,
Yeah.
lose to
Got 'em both at
LSU.
home. Yeah.
Let's give him the Florida win because it makes the scenario funnier. You are 6-1 going to LSU. You lose to LSU, you beat Missouri, lose to South Carolina, beat Samford, lose to Texas. You're 8-4. You did it again.
Yeah.
You're 8-4 again. How does this keep happening to Texas A&M? You have more money than anyone, it feels like. How do you keep doing this? Last year I believed A&M could be something more. I felt that, Jimbo's gone, new dawn maybe for A&M, but no. It doesn't matter who the coach is. It doesn't matter what anything is. Texas A&M is Texas A&M. They could have anyone playing there, and I feel like I just have to put them in 8-4 until they're not 8-4 again. I hate doing that to them, but you look at that schedule and you can see it happen. You can see the same thing happen again that happened last year.
You definitely can. And I will say this, at least, especially on that offense, they've got the star power there, if it all breaks right, where they could finally get past that glass ceiling we're talking about, right? I think their best case scenario is you just lose the LSU Texas games and you work your way to 10-2. That may be in the cards, but boy, that is everything going right, and that means your offense is the likes of explosiveness they haven't seen since Johnny Manziel's been there.
That also means they are probably absolutely destroying teams by pounding the ball down their throat, which is, as
True.
I've specified
Very
multiple times,
And
kind
you
of
like that.
yeah.
You like that
I
stuff.
like that type of stuff. I think that's what we've been seeing the trend the last few years too in college football. Is they get back to having a great defense and just dual threat quarterback. We're going to run it. We're going to see what we can do. Set up those big passes only when you need to. And we're talking about offense. So now we got to talk about Josh Heupel in Tennessee. Year number 5 for Josh Heupel. It's a Tennessee team that was 10-3 last year, made the college football playoffs. Got to see this Tennessee team in person, and they looked the part. They really did. But then everything went wrong once the regular season ended. Once they went 10-2, something in the college football universe remembered, oh yeah, Tennessee can't have nice things. What are we doing here? They're going to get blown out at Ohio State, where they're going to be returned to being a laughingstock. And then to make things worse, Nico Iamaleava is gonna leave and go to UCLA, and we had a video about that weird situation that happened there. Transfers. Tennessee is now without a quarterback. And then to make things even worse, what are your better defensive backs? Jermon McCoy. He tore his ACL in January. Tennessee cannot get a break even when they do get a break. That's just how they are. The snake bit team that they've been for forever. And this is a Tennessee team that only brings back 39% of its starting production on offense this year. Those are one of the few stats that stood out to me as just mind-blowing. A Tennessee team that's going to be relying on defense. When was the last time we saw that happen? If you answered last year, you're correct, actually, because how many times last year did we talk about how good Tennessee's defense was and how good Dylan Sampson was as a running back? We talked about that, it felt like every week, Tyler. How good Tennessee was, not because of that offense that, you would think from Josh Heupel, but because the defense that could lock people down and turn it into maybe a 1st to 24 or 27. Tennessee's going to have to do it again. Your quarterback more than likely is going to be Joey Aguilar, the App State transfer, who you basically traded with UCLA, was committed to go there in the portal, then went to Tennessee. And Aguilar's broken some passing records at App State. He's not an absolute bum by any means. You're not getting okay, here's some Group 5 guy, yay, this is going to be a disaster of a year. You're still going to have guys. Deshaun Bishop, Peyton Lewis, you're going to have some running backs. Joshua Josephs is going to be a fun defensive end. Aaron Carter at linebacker, Boo Carter as well, defensive back. Tennessee is going to have some guys, but once again, for what feels like the 700th time this episode, it's going to come down to how good is your quarterback and what will Tennessee's offense look like. Syracuse, East Tennessee State, those are winnable games. If you lose one of those, that's already a pretty good indicator of what Tennessee's going to be this year. Georgia is the test. It is the test of all the tests, because if you're somehow competitive in that game, and I'm not even saying win that game, I'm saying just be competitive at home early in the season. Yeah, you feel pretty good about how the rest of the season could go for a while, because then it's UAB, Mississippi State, bye week, Arkansas, probably losing at Alabama, but then Kentucky, OU, bye week, New Mexico State, Florida, which will continue to be an anomaly, I feel like, until we figure them out and see enough by that point, and then Vanderbilt at the end of the year. Tennessee could do just about anything this year outside of beating Georgia and Alabama, and I wouldn't be surprised. That's just who they're going to be. They could still find a way to get 9 wins, and I'd go, okay, this is who Josh Heupel is. He's going to find a way to continue to just put these teams together no matter the quarterback, or they could fall off a cliff, stumble against Georgia, Bama, maybe Oklahoma, lose at Florida, maybe drop another game they shouldn't for whatever reason on the road. Maybe they get stunned by a Kentucky somehow, and Kentucky gets their one oddball win of the year there. Tennessee could do anything. And I mean anything. And that's just who they're going to be this year. It feels like I'm talking about Ole Miss again, or maybe Texas A&M some years, but that's what it happens when you're the number 9 team in the SEC preseason wise. You are one of the most average teams, and when you're in that average range, you could do just about anything.
What's funny is I have them sandwiched between South Carolina and Ole Miss, number 9 in my kind of personal power rankings. The thing with Tennessee, you pointed out properly with the Georgia side of things. That game will tell you a lot. It's not going to tell you the whole story, but it'll really tell you how far away they are from being competitive, or if they're close enough. Because, like I said, if they could compete with Georgia, not win, but just compete, you feel a lot better about that Alabama game on the road. You feel a lot better about that Oklahoma game at home. You feel a lot better about that Florida game on the road late in the season. Joey Aguilar, what an opportunity this guy has ahead of him, Cade. I mean, a guy who was fully going, like I said, going to UCLA, maybe have a shot there, but then all of a sudden he's now an SEC starting quarterback. And has done some good things at Appalachian State, but that's the Sun Belt Conference. No disrespect to the Sun Belt. We love the Sun Belt.
We do love the Fun Belt on this channel.
Yeah, but man, what a step up. I mean, the environments you're playing in are completely different.
Yeah, so one of the biggest games Aguilar's played in was the double OT game against North Carolina a few years ago. That was his first start. Gets thrown in and takes North Carolina 2 years ago to double overtime. He's got the ability to be there. It's just I don't know how much he can do is the problem.
Well, and here's the thing: when it comes, we just talked about the quarterback situation at Ole Miss and Texas A&M. Weirdly, I feel the best. I feel the best of those three teams, including Tennessee. Feel the best about Tennessee. Why is that? Because Aguilar being an older quarterback, guess who's been there before and done that? Talk about going from small stakes to large stakes pretty quick. Josh Heupel's done
Yeah, I
that
was gonna say,
in his
is
playing
it
days,
some guy named Josh Heupel?
right? So if there's anybody that could guide you through that, it's going to be Josh Heupel. And here's the big thing too: we talk about that defense and how great they were last year, and rightfully so. Heupel realized, hey, we need to let that defense eat, and then we're going to control the clock with Dylan Sampson, who was a beast, amazing to watch. Um, they return 8 starters on that defensive side, so that gives me more confidence as well. Are they going to repeat the 10 wins? No, but I could see a world where Tennessee walks in. You lose that Georgia game, you lose that Alabama game, probably that Florida game, depending on how Lagway is. But I would say outside of those two, right now, based on this roster, outside of the Georgia Alabama game, I'd give them a fighter's chance. So I'm really more in the camp, probably 9-3 with this Tennessee team. I can see that happening. Now, could also, the wheels come off and they slip to 8-4, 7-5. Sure, there's that risk, but I'm more in the 8 to 9 win camp than I am in the 7 win camp for Tennessee here.
Yeah, and that's the weird thing
And that's
is,
probably a stretch for a lot of people. I get it.
yeah,
I get it.
and that's but what I was gonna say is I still think Tennessee, despite all the problems we went into and all the nightmare offseason stuff they've had go their way, are still gonna be a good team. Georgia and
Yeah.
Alabama, I think you lose. And I think I agree with you. I think you beat one of Oklahoma or Florida. I think if you do that, that gets you a 9-win team. And it feels weird putting Tennessee above this mesh of a good category we had. That feels wrong to do. But with the way their schedule's set up, with the way the way the breaks are presented, you look at what Tennessee's capable of, and we've seen them do it before. They just did it. They just made the playoffs. And it wasn't like Nico was the guy willing them there. We've been
No.
over
In
this,
fact,
and
they won in spite of him a lot of times, to be
yeah,
honest.
exactly. And if Joey Aguilar can just do that, we're not asking him to go out there and be, the greatest quarterback in Tennessee history. We're not going out
Just
there
be a
and
good
asking,
game.
yeah, we're not asking him to go out there and be the second coming of Peyton Manning or anything. You're just asking him to go out there and be competent.
Well, here's the thing. He could be the Diego Pavia this season,
He
to be
could.
quite honest.
He
To
could.
be
He is a bit
honest.
of a
I could
gunslinger. He
see him
does have
filling that.
that tendency
Yeah.
to him. So
I
that,
could see him filling that.
yeah, I could see Tennessee. Like I said, I'll say one last time with them. Anything besides, thumping Georgia or Alabama would be okay. Josh Heupel's that guy. He's a great coach. I don't know what else you want me to say. And now we get to Oklahoma, Tyler. We finally get to our team on the board, and Brent Venables, year 4. Oh my goodness, this is a make or break year for Brent Venables because, I mean, we've seen it, we've dealt with it, we suffered, we laughed, we cried some more, we cried
Mainly
even a third
cried. Yeah.
time. We mourned the death of the forward pass, and then we watched it come back for one game only, and then it died again because that game was Maine, and then we laughed again because we beat Alabama somehow. I will never
Without the
understand.
forward pass.
Without the forward pass, we brought back amazing football. This is an OU team. Deion Burks going to be a fun receiver. John Mateer comes in. It's an Oklahoma team that I think people just want to see offense. I don't even want to think people just want to see passes that are completed and an offensive line that can block and receivers that don't get injured every 2 plays and running backs that don't fumble the ball every 5 carries. If Oklahoma can just be competent and quarterback, there's some running back fumbling issues too. There's a lot. You can go back and watch every video, including the one where I jinxed Alabama to perfection. Jaden Ott, transfer from Cal. I'm really high on Jaden Ott. Some people aren't. I really am. I think he's the real deal. I think John Mateer can be the real deal, but I want to see it first against Michigan. I'm not going to jump on that hype train yet until I see it with my own 2 eyes. Well, if he does, though, I will start to become insufferable on this channel. I am warning y'all right now. If OU beats Michigan, the hype train begins. If they lose to Michigan, the hype train stops immediately. But you look at R. Mason Thomas, Kip Lewis, Peyton Bowen. The defense should be great for OU. The defense is going to be the heart of this team, it feels like, once again. But if that offense can be good or even great, Bill Connolly said this best, and I agree with him. If this Oklahoma offense is just even top 30, this team can win 9 games. And you look at that and say 9 games with Michigan, with Texas, at South Carolina. You look at Ole Miss, Tennessee, that brutal October at Alabama, Missouri, and LSU. The number one strength of schedule in the country. Do you think Oklahoma can still go 9-3 with all of that? You can call me delusional. You can call me a fan. You can call me whatever you want to. But I think the answer is yes, because of all the problems we've listed with every other team. And OU will still have their problems. We got to see how the offensive line gels. We've got to see how the receivers work outside of Deion Burks and some others. There's a lot of moving parts for Oklahoma, but you see where that hype comes from.
You do, but you also see the reasons for concern. The interesting part, Cade, and we've talked about this a little bit off air, we've talked about it on air, kind of, in some of the transfer news. You mentioned a not material, of course. You're starting to see that despite, we're at a spot where the preseason coaches poll has been released this week, AP poll, we're waiting on next week. OU's just ranked outside the top 25. Despite that, you're seeing a lot of national media guys start to kind of hedge their bet, saying, hey, there's dark horse. It's this OU team, right? And they start listing all the great things about the material, about Odd, about this defense, specifically that defensive line. This defensive line reminds me, I say reminds me, it has the chance to be what South Carolina was last year.
It does.
Where you're looking at it, you're going, oh my God, no matter who they bring in, they've got dogs. I mean, that defensive line is too deep of guys that would start just about anywhere in the country. Is that good? Linebacking core without Danny Stutzman, is Kip Lewis going to be the heir apparent? They're hyping him up to be. Hopefully he is. The secondary, you feel a lot better about it than what you had in past years when Lincoln Riley was here. Even though you still lose talent there, Billy Bowman, he's gone, but that's okay. You got guys that can play back there now. The real big question, and I think you touched on it, is that O-line. Remember, OU has had a reputation throughout the 2000s that they produce NFL offensive linemen. You look at this O-line right now, and outside of Eddie, the freshman,
Eddie Pierre-Louis, yeah.
He's probably the only one that you would rate, oh, hey, that guy could be an NFL guy. The other linemen realize that. They don't want to be known as the first O-line in a while that was kind of bad. Weren't last year. So, and part of that was injury, of course, but they are hungry to prove that, hey, we are up to the standard of OU football when it comes to that. And I really think as much hype, and rightfully so, John Mateer is getting a healthy Jay Knott, I think is an unsung part of this team. You pair him with Xavier Robinson, like, oh my God, if they're both kicking and going, it could be one of the nastiest 1-2 combos you've got in the conference. That being said, the schedule, as we talk about third teams, boy, it could drag you down. I mean, that Michigan game straight away, you don't get run. You get Illinois State, which you'll learn a little bit, but not really. And then you welcome Michigan. That's the saving grace is that's at home. Fans are going to get up for that. It's the first big game of your season.
Yeah, and to point that out, by the way, tickets for that Michigan game are already at $400. We have another month to go. This is the first time Michigan has ever come to Norman. It's the first time I think they played since 1975 or New Year's Day of 76.
Yeah.
They've only played one time ever, I think. I could be wrong, but I think it's the second meeting ever. It's a big deal. It is a massive deal. I mean, Oklahoma, you look at this schedule and you look at those first 5 games, and I've been talking to people about this, and people have been telling me about this forever, that it's just, man, if we can just get past Michigan, you should be, and the word everyone uses is should, not could, but should be 5-0 going into Texas. And everyone just kind of forgets that Auburn is right there. And the worry in the back of my mind is Jackson Arnold decides that's going to be the game he goes off in his return to Norman. I don't know if that'll happen or not, but it's something about watching OU football the last 5 years has kind of told me if anything is going to go haywire, it might be that game more than the mission. That game kind of worries me almost the same way playing K State would. I guess is the best way to put it. That feels like that's the nightmare trap game. Oh no, I don't care that that's at home. Something weird is going to happen in that game. I feel it in my bones. Something will go wrong somewhere against. I'm not saying they're going to lose that game, but something weird will happen. But if Oklahoma's 5-0 going into Texas, that's a great sign for OU. That is okay, things are going the way they should, but then you get to that back seven. And oh my gosh, is that brutal. Look at the rest of that October. Who did OU make? Who made Greg Sankey that mad to do this?
Yeah.
Who made it? Who pissed him off that much to create this schedule of Texas, which is supposed to be there, at South Carolina, Ole Miss, Tennessee? But I think with the problems that we've listed out with Ole Miss and Tennessee, even a little bit, and South Carolina just a teensy bit, with that game being at 11 a.m. and not at night, I think OU has the opportunity to split that and go 7-2. I think the opportunity is there to split that. If that happens, Alabama's probably a loss. It's at Alabama. Alabama's going to want they're wanting revenge for last year. I don't blame them. 7-3. I think you can beat Missouri. And then I talked about it with LSU. OU picks, I don't know why this happens under Brent Venables, but we've seen it 3 years in a row now. OU picks one game in November at home to go absolutely nuclear on someone for no reason. They did it to Bama last year. They annihilated West Virginia for when they were a 9-win team 2 years ago. And Oklahoma State, who was probably better than them based on the fact that they had a defense in 2022 and OU did not. OU shut them down the majority of that game and won 28-13 in one of the most boring second halves you will ever see. If OU picks LSU as that game and that's a night game, if that's Saturday night and OU's 8-3 and maybe playing a very highly ranked LSU on the fringe of, hey, we're trying to sneak our way back into the playoff conversation. Not that I think OU at 9-3 is a shoe-in or anything like that. But if you get there, that could be that weird game where they go off, play the game of the season, and knock out LSU. That could happen again. That's very realistic, I feel like, of if OU's going to make it 9-3. The problem is you play too many good teams in too quick of a schedule for that, I feel like, to happen. I hate doing this to myself, but I think 8-4 is more realistic for OU, which then raises the conversation of does Brent Venables get fired for 8-4? I don't know. I feel like 7-5 or worse is a yes, fire him. 8-4 in the right win could be keep him. 9-3 or better is keep him. I don't know about you, Tyler, but I feel like that's kind of where Oklahoma's at.
It is. And when I break down the rankings for me, again, this is all based off what I feel talent on paper. I actually have OU number 4.
Okay.
Is that maybe a bit high?
Okay.
I don't know. But tell me, do you feel better about John Mateer compared to the rest of the quarterbacks that Alabama, Florida, A&M, South Carolina have behind them?
I feel
I kind of
better
feel better
about
about
him,
John
especially
Mateer.
with Nick Arbuckle being there. I do
Yeah,
feel better,
absolutely.
but I don't know
Yeah,
how much that is me feeling better because I
right.
just believe
Sure.
in being an OU fan.
And then on top of that, with the receivers and running backs included, do you not feel better about what OU has compared to Alabama, Florida, A&M, and South Carolina? I do.
Yeah, I do.
But again, the schedule is so grueling that I am very much in agreement with you on it is very possible, even if OU's markedly better than what they were last year. You don't have the injuries. Mateer's what he's supposed to be or close to it. Jay Knott's healthy and good. Very well could still be an 8-4 team. Just because the back half of that schedule is so brutal, it's almost unfair, even as a bias person rooting for OU to say, yeah, oh, you're just going to roll through Texas, South Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, and LSU with no issues. I'm
Now
not worried about
I
Missouri.
do know some people who think that's going to happen, but that person is
Right. That's not realistic, though.
that's not real.
I
No,
think
but
at I
it is
think
funny though.
at best, you're looking at a 10-2 team, and that's getting breaks. that home game against LSU. You talked about that. You win that one, but it's going to be really tough to beat Texas if they're on. It's going to be really tough to beat a
It is. And I feel like,
hungry Alabama
it's
team that's
yeah.
that good and in contention down the stretch of the season for a playoff.
Yeah.
So I think at best you're looking at 10-2, more likely. I'd say 9-3 is more realistically in play, but I'm no more than 9 wins. I'm at that 8-4, 9-3 mark for this
Yeah,
OU team.
I'm going a little bit more cautious and putting them in 8-4. I think they're kind of that same South Carolina, Florida. I'd like to put them at 9, but I don't know if I, in a good conscience, can put them at 9.
Sure, sure.
That's where I feel with Oklahoma. And again, hate doing it,
That could be a
but
really good 8-win team too. That's
they
the
could.
crazy part.
Does
That's
that
where
mean
we're
we
at.
get to start doing the OU as the best 8-4 team? And do we get to start doing that bid if that
Oh, absolutely.
happens?
Of course.
I
Yeah.
guess we
I mean,
will.
if Jay Daniels can win Heisman with an 8-4 LSU team, by God, we can make sure John Mateer with an
Okay.
8-4 team.
Okay. Did LSU really go 8-4 with Jay Daniels? I don't know if they did or not. I don't think they. I think they went 9-3 or 10 or so. I don't know. That's not the point of
They
this
were 10
video. We're
wins.
talking about Auburn now. Auburn, number 11 in the preseason poll. Hugh Freeze, please put together a competent team. Auburn fans are begging you. And he win got Jackson Arnold. You pair him with Cam Coleman. You pair him with Eric Singleton from Georgia Tech. One of the best transfers of the whole portal. Auburn was able to get him. Xavier Chaplin and Connor Lew, two great offensive linemen. Lew, the center. Keldrick Falk on the defensive line. Malcolm Simmons, another receiver you could put in there. Auburn is going to have the weapons to do something. They have the talent offensively. Hugh Freeze knows offense. They can put this together. And yet, when I look at this schedule, I still see the idea that they could somehow go 5-7. Still. It just feels unreal to me that I think that could still happen because what it all, I don't want to say it all hinges on, but if they lose to Baylor that week 1 and you lose at Oklahoma and A&M and you're 2-3 with a bye and you get welcomed by you're welcoming Georgia in, things could get off the rails fast again. And you're starting to talk about a 2-4 Auburn team with Missouri, Arkansas on the road. Start to think about Vanderbilt and what happened last year there. Diego Pavia, can he do it again? Alabama's waiting for you at the end of the year. They want to try to get another massive win. And, they're going to be thinking about playoffs more than likely at that point. Things could get south really fast for Auburn. They really could. But at the same time, they could be a really good team. Baylor is winnable. Texas A&M and OU are winnable. Missouri, Arkansas, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, winnable. Mercer, if you don't win that game, you fire everybody, honestly, if you somehow lost that. Alabama's, I don't want to say winnable because, it's Iron Bowl at home. That game's always winnable for Auburn, even when they're really bad. It just is. I don't know why, but it is. Auburn feels like the ultimate 8-ball type of team. You could shake them and shake them and shake them. You're going to get a different answer every week.
Yeah, you could. Real quick before we dive deep into Auburn, do want to correct myself a little bit. You're right. They did win 10 games on that LSU
Okay,
team,
thank
but
you. I was about
they
to
were in
say
some
they did
chaotic.
not
They
go
were in
eight and
some
four.
chaotic
I don't
situations.
want
In some
LSU
chaotic
fans
situations.
screaming at us in the comments
Yeah,
saying,
yeah.
"Don't disrespect Jaden Daniels. We didn't go 8-4."
No,
Even
I
though,
don't. I
even
don't
though I
because
think that's more
he was
disrespecting the
phenomenal.
defense than anything else. But
Yeah. Yes, well, that's what it was because that defense was very bad that year. I mean, you squeaked by against Arkansas. Missouri scored 39 on them in a win. They gave up 35 against Florida, 30 against A&M. They won those games, but it was very chaotic, right? So, and you give up 55 to Ole Miss, 42 to Bama. So that defense wasn't good. Florida State, you gave up 45 to kick off the season. So defense was not great. That's why it felt like 4 losses. So not the case. It was just 3. I want to apologize there. But anyways, diving into Auburn. So you're talking about with the OU schedule, how hey maybe Jackson Arnold picks the OU game just to go nuts, right? The problem is, Kate, is there enough talent around Jackson Arnold on this team for them to realistically pose a huge threat? Do they have the pieces to maybe pull off an upset on that schedule?
I
Very
think
possible.
they've got the receiver core to do it. It's just, can the O line and running backs mesh as well?
Right.
is the problem.
If Arnold's back in the same situation where he's running for his life like it was at OU, we've already shown he's back when that happens. I'm not saying he's not talented because OU didn't really give him a fair shake. I'll admit that. But if it's back to the same situation where he's got to run for his life most of the time, I don't know if he's got it. And if that's the case, we talked about how OU's D line could be really, really stout. Uh, Georgia's going to be nasty. Alabama's going to be nasty. There's, three potential pretty easy losses just based off the fact that your offense is going to be able to move the ball, not factoring in. You mentioned Vanderbilt, could be chaotic. The Baylor game is going to tell you a lot straight off the bat about how good either one of those teams are, or, their actual chances. And Arkansas could get chaotic. So I think ultimately for Auburn, the ceiling is probably 8-4. More realistically, I can see them being a 7-5 team. That'll give them room to maybe pull off the big upset, but otherwise, you're probably losing to who you expect to lose to.
Yeah, I want to think this Auburn team has the ability to do something. I really would like to see Jackson Arnold get his redemption story, come
Don't
out,
lie.
play
Don't
better.
lie to the people out there.
Yeah, I do. I
You
think
did not like Jackson Arnold
I did
last
not
year.
like
We've got
I did
video
not
evidence of
like
that.
Jackson Arnold last year, but that doesn't mean I outright hate the kid and want him to fail at life or anything. I think I hate Seth Luttrell's hiring more than I hate Jackson Arnold. And I'm not turning this into another OU segment. We're talking about Auburn here. I
Yes.
think Auburn has the ability to do something. But like you said, I don't think that something is better than 8-4 or 7-5. I realistically think Auburn is going to lose to Baylor week 1. I think they probably lose OU, A&M back to back on the road. Bye week, Georgia beats them, and we start having this conversation of all right, 2-4. When does Hugh Freeze get fired? I think Hugh Freeze gets fired. Watch starts pretty quick. I think it starts after September. We start getting into that, and Auburn fans start counting down the days. But it wouldn't surprise me if Auburn pulls off a weird stretch where maybe they can beat Missouri, Kentucky, get some home wins, maybe pull something out against Arkansas or Vanderbilt, and you start to go, oh no, is Hugh Freeze going to keep his job? Is Auburn going to go 7-5 and Hugh Freeze keeps his job? And then just to be Auburn, they're going to lose to Vanderbilt again and go 6-6 and be the most perfectly average team you could imagine in the SEC. That's where I think Auburn is. It wouldn't shock me if they won a bowl game against some random Sun Belt team and went 7-6. I just do not have much faith in Auburn to do anything, even though I like some of the pieces they have. And I love their receiving core, by the way. I love Coleman. I love Singleton. I think that receiving core could be special. I just don't think they have the quarterback and offensive line to really make the most of it, or the coach either at this point. And Tyler has gone silent again.
Well, on purpose. You finished it off well. I had no doubt.
Okay, you got something else for me. So we'll go from one Tiger to another. We'll go to Missouri now. 10-3 last year. Music City Bowl champions. Missouri had some players last year. They had some guys. I'm not going to say they were elite guys, but they had some guys. And they were able to win 10 again. But this year, this Missouri team dropping off quite a bit, it feels like. I mean, you're all the way down to 12 of the preseason poll. Bo Prabula, the Penn State transfer, more than likely going to be your quarterback. You've got your talent around you. You've got Kevin Coleman Jr. as receiver. You've got Caden Green on the offensive line. Some guys getting some SEC recognition. Zion Young on the defensive end will be fun to watch. But you start to get into Missouri, and once again, that what we talked about last year would have been a very favorable start of Central Arkansas, Kansas, and Louisiana. It depends on how you feel about Kansas, really. Because then South Carolina's looming. Yeah, you get UMass, but then Alabama, at Auburn, at Vanderbilt. Something could go wrong. And I mean really wrong in that 3-game stretch there. If you play your cards absolutely wrong. This is Missouri we're talking about. Even some of the Missouri fans I've interacted with have said, we are Missouri. If something can go wrong, it will go wrong. That's Missouri football for you. A&M, Mississippi State, at OU, and at Arkansas to end the year. I would like to think Missouri can, knock off a few of these pieces. You could say maybe you find 8 wins again. With last year's team, I think it could easily be done. So with this year's team, it looks a lot more difficult.
I mean, the schedule looks very favorable,
It
right?
does. It
But
does.
as you pointed out, boy, you lost so much talent off that team. I mean, your O line returning's solid. There's experience there, and that may be the strength of your team. But it really comes down to what is Bo Prabila going to do? Can he lead what could be another fun receiving core? You don't have quite the top end talent on that receiving core. You don't have Luther Burden back, but you've got solid players there. So if you could find balance in that passing game, find some movement there, that O line's opening lanes for your running backs, maybe you could move the ball enough. It's just, is that defense going to be as good as it's been? That's kind of been the unsung hero of the Missouri team. Right? Talks about, what they've been able to do with that offense over the last couple of years and how it surprised people. That defense has been rock steady. And they've got experienced guys when you look up and down their projected starters, but can it carry the weight? Now, Cade, I'm a little bit more of a optimist, I guess, when it comes to Missouri. I don't want to be personally in the power rankings. I have 14th. Like, I don't believe in their talent, but the schedule sets up so nice. You give yourself plenty of runway, regardless if Kansas is good or not. I don't think Kansas is top of conference good in the Big 12. So you're looking at probably more of a middle of the road Kansas team. Yeah, Jalen Daniels is going to be tough to deal with early on, but he may not have enough around him for them to win that game. So if
Yeah, I mean, you're
you can
right.
survive that, South Carolina is going to be your real big first test. Can you handle Lenore Hills? So if you lose that game, you're obviously beating UMass. You're at least going into Alabama, uh, with 4 wins under your belt. You lose against Alabama. I think they've got enough talent to compete with Auburn, at
Yeah,
least right now, as
I
we
would
sit
think
here.
so. I would
I
hope
feel it's
so.
weird. I'm going to say this. It's weird. I'm going to say this. I feel better about their chances in the Auburn game. Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of weird to say, but that's where I'm at on it. So,
I mean, yeah.
at that point, if
Oh,
you could skate by Auburn and Vandy, let's say, somehow you beat both of them for sure. Then you're only looking at 2 losses, and the rest of the way, okay, you could fall to A&M, could fall to Oklahoma, but not so concerned about them falling to Mississippi State or Arkansas. It's possible, but it's not like a high chance for me. So I could talk myself into 8-win Missouri team. Do I think it's likely? Maybe not. But the weird thing is, I could also see the disaster scenario. Kansas, you lose to South Carolina, Bama, you lose to one of Auburn or Vanderbilt, you lose to Oklahoma, and maybe you fall against Arkansas, and then it's the sky's falling. Ideally, realistically, this is, I would say, a 7-win Missouri team. I
yeah.
think that's the baseline. That's what it should be, and that would be. Fans may not like that, but considering all the talent that was depleted from the roster, I think that's a fair assumption. Gives yourself a runway to build back up into next year. Uh, but I don't see them beyond 8 wins. I think 8 wins is a dream scenario.
Yeah, this is a team that last year's Missouri versus this schedule would be like last year's Missouri versus last year's schedule. You would hear me talking about how this team is going to win 10 games somehow, some way. They'll do it. It'll irritate everybody. And you look at their schedule and go, what are we doing here? Missouri gets to do that. Did they just get a 10 free wins, it feels like? But this year, they don't have the team to do it. You laid it out as well as I could have. Kansas, South Carolina, Alabama. Yeah, those are all at home, but those are all very losable games on completely different circumstances. I agree with you. I think they're more likely to beat Auburn than they are Vanderbilt. I could see them losing at Arkansas and just absolutely flatlining in November. Those are all very realistic things, but at the same time, I feel like Missouri is, I don't know if they've earned the goodwill considering some of the battles I've seen between idiots on social media, but that's neither here nor there. But I will give them the goodwill that I think they should be, by all means, a good team. 7-5, I think, is fair enough for Missouri. As much as I think they deserve payback in Norman by a lot because of what I had to watch I had to watch football terrorism last year a lot, and I didn't even get to
They
see us
didn't win
beat.
that game. OU gave them that.
Okay,
That's
well,
a different.
once this is now the seventh team we have turned into talking about Oklahoma, but we'll see if we do that for the next team because the schedule's just so favorable. It just is. How Missouri doesn't get 7 wins. If they somehow don't get 7 out of this, we're going to have a conversation. And speaking of conversations, it's time for the one I've been waiting for maybe all day to talk about. It's time to talk about the fight in Diego Pavias of Vanderbilt. What a great story last year. So many people are excited to see what Vanderbilt can do, or they will forget Vanderbilt exists until they play Alabama again, and we'll go, "Oh, I remember that last. That was funny." Because it was. It just was. You have to accept that it was funny. Even if you're an Alabama fan, it was pretty funny. Y'all won't think it's funny. You're not supposed to, but we all thought it was funny. 7-6 last year was Vanderbilt. Diego Pavia, Eli Stowers returns. Junior Scheller Stowers, once again, not the best at pronunciating. Junior Sherrill, Cedric Alexander. Your weapons are back if you're Vanderbilt. You have that same scheme. Everything can work to perfection. The problem is you have to go to Virginia Tech and South Carolina back-to-back weeks in weeks 2 and 3. That's not a fun setup. And then Alabama's waiting for you to start October, and after that bye is immediately LSU with Texas looming a few weeks later. Not very fun. But we know Vanderbilt played Texas really close last year in Nashville. This year's in Austin, completely different team, completely different story. I get it. They've hung with LSU a bit. They get them at home this year. It's at 11 a.m. or it's going to be at noon, something along those lines, noon to 1 over there on the East Coast. That can be that weird sleepy game you think about where it's okay, why is this tight in the fourth quarter? Somebody wake LSU up. What's happening? Vanderbilt is a team of possibilities. The only problem is that at some point in time, reality will come crashing back in like it did last year, unfortunately, I feel like. I hate saying it. I hate saying that, Tyler, because I want to see the meme dream of Vandy doing it and being a realistic, serious contender in the SEC somehow. One day it might happen in a video game, but just I want to see Diego Pavia ball out again. I'm excited to see what he does this year.
Yeah, it'd be fun, but the unfortunate news is, we just talked about Missouri struggling to find, 8 wins, maybe 7. A lot of the Vegas books are higher on Missouri than they are. You got Vandy
Yeah.
over under, and you could see why going up and down that schedule. You mentioned the early pitfalls, back to back, VT, South Carolina on the road. That's not fun. You could lose both of those. And you get that little stretch, Georgia State, Utah State, to prep yourself for Alabama. Probably 3-3 after that. Potentially then that LSU game you're falling. May get one back against Missouri there. Texas, you're most likely falling at that point. You've got to beat Auburn and Kentucky if potentially bowl eligible. And then you got Tennessee waiting. So, I mean, I'm probably higher than what Vegas is. I could see Vanderbilt getting to 6 wins. It wouldn't be pretty. You wouldn't get a lot of upsets, obviously, but I could see it happening. Like, you're in those games. Realistically, though, that's about as high I could go. Maybe 7. Maybe you pull off an upset you're not supposed to. You're kind of illustrating a couple scenarios there, like the LSU game. Hey, maybe LSU takes it for granted, but I'd say this looks like a classic 6-win team, maybe 5 win if everything really goes.
Yeah. I want to believe that Vanderbilt can do better, but at the same time, I also don't believe Vanderbilt can do better. I
Yeah.
want to, but I can't. I could see them maybe beating a Virginia Tech on the road if they play their cards right, if you get your breaks, if Virginia Tech just falls flat on their face to start the year again. I could see 7-5 with Vanderbilt. I could see them sneaking into being good again, but I have to agree with you. Like we have for almost the majority of this video, we're putting Vanderbilt
Pretty,
in average
this doesn't
tier.
happen very often.
Yeah, this doesn't happen that we're usually in unanimous agreement for 13 straight teams and their future. But Vanderbilt, a perfectly average team. Maybe a more entertaining team than Auburn. Maybe a more entertaining team than some of these others we've already listed because of Diego Pavia and his gutsiness and his ability to make absolutely crazy plays and then near disastrous plays, sometimes all in one. But that's Vanderbilt for you. That's who they're going to continue to be. Clark Lee, keep building fun Vanderbilt football. That's all I can say for you. And then Arkansas, number 14. Arkansas's got Taylon Green. He's exciting. It's about the nicest thing I could say about Arkansas. I hate saying that for them because they're going to get some weird big win. Sam Pittman finds a way to get one giant win every season, it feels like. That is the way of Arkansas. You should start the year with 2 wins, Bama A&M and Arkansas State, Ole Miss at Memphis, then you get Notre Dame coming to town, Tennessee, A&M, Auburn, Mississippi State. Maybe if you're lucky, you can squeeze 3-1 through that stretch. Things could get really bad, and you could be 1-3. LSU and Texas and Missouri to end the year could be a nightmare, though. You could just be slipping back into, okay, can we please win one game? We need bowl eligibility badly, and it may not happen. Arkansas went 7-6 last year. What can they put together this year?
I mean, they've got a quarterback that could be interesting, and they've got an O-line that's at least got some good experience. It's about what we can say about it, right? So there's a lot of question marks on this team. I mean, a huge amount of question marks. They're very, um, how do we say this? You see this a lot in the NFL sometimes, Cade, where teams go through, they are on the right side of the coin flips, right? Where they have a bunch of those close games, and they just happen to be on the right side of the coin. Arkansas is in that spot again, similar to last year, where if they're on the right side of the coin flips, you may be looking at a 7-win team, 6-win team. If you're on the wrong side, it slip pretty easily to 5-7, 4. So the ceiling, maybe 7 wins. I mean, that's stretch, boy. I
It's
mean,
tight.
you get Alabama, Arkansas State. That's your runway. Ole Miss, Memphis, that could be losses. Notre Dame, loss. At Tennessee, could be easily A&M, loss. Auburn's going to be a fight. Mississippi State's probably guaranteed wins. You're at 3 guaranteed wins. Other than that, you've got no guaranteed wins. Missouri, I mean, you're going to be competitive, but it's not guaranteed. So you're looking at a wide range of possibilities, and unfortunately, the best for Auburn is, or excuse me, not Auburn,
Not
Arkansas.
Auburn. Arkansas.
Yeah, not Auburn, is probably 6-7 wins. I mean, that's where I'm at with them. I think they could achieve bowl eligibility. They might not. Might be just a game or two short of that.
Well, here's what I'm gonna do. Here's my deal I'm gonna make with Arkansas fans. I'm gonna do them a favor. 2
Oh,
years
okay.
ago, I said KJ Jefferson was the truth, or maybe it was 3 years ago. I said Arkansas is gonna win 10 games. They were not very good.
Yeah.
Last year, I said Arkansas will go 3-9 and Sam Pittman will get fired. He did not get fired and they won 7 games. I'm going to do maximum chaos again, Tyler. Arkansas
Okay.
is going to go 5-7. You are welcome, Arkansas fans. You will now be good this year for some reason. Every time I say Arkansas is going to do something, they do the exact opposite. I'm going to put them in the lower part of average, and we're going to see if I can get Arkansas right once. If they're really good and somehow win like 8 games this year, y'all better do me a favor at some point. Let us beat you in baseball or something, please. I need something. That's my plea to Arkansas fan. That's my deal. Or send me one of the baseball beer hats. I'd like one of those. Those look nice.
There you go.
That might be a
There you
lot
go.
more reasonable to try to obtain one of those. But that's my deal with Arkansas this year. I don't really know what they can do. They've got some weapons. You mentioned the offensive line. Fernando Carmona Jr. is one of those guys in the SEC media team. He'll be good for them. They've got Cam Ball, first name, all name team, by the way, defensive lineman. Can Cam Ball is going to be the question of the year for him. I just had to throw that in there. I've been thinking about that all day, how I was going to throw that in there. Braylon Russell, good running back. Arkansas, they'll have their moments. They always do. They'll have some head scratchers as well. It is the way of the Razorbacks. Kentucky, last year we disagreed a bit on Kentucky. You were a bit higher on them, not super high, but you were a bit higher on them. I was a bit lower. It ended on the lower end. This year, you might be willing to join me because Zach Calzada is back in the SEC. Was at A&M in 2021 when they beat Alabama. Then he was at Auburn, and he spent the last 2 years at Incarnate Word. He has Dante Dowdle by his side, transfer running back from Nebraska, and a transfer from South Dakota who's a monster on the D-line in McQueese Humphrey Grace. Kentucky will have some talent. It's not like there's some terrible horrendous team. But they went 4-8 last year, and you look at a stretch of at South Carolina, at Georgia, then a bye, Texas, Tennessee, at Auburn and Florida, ending the year with after Tennessee Tech, at Vandy and Louisville, and Ole Miss early on in the year. What is Kentucky looking at realistically? I think 3 games are guaranteed to win in Toledo, Eastern Michigan, and Tennessee Tech. Lord help you if you lose one of those. But other than that, where do you see a win for Kentucky? Maybe at Auburn, maybe at Vanderbilt, maybe they beat someone funny like Ole Miss or Florida at home. I don't know.
Yeah, you're the answer is you're really stretching for this team just to win 6 games. I mean, you're
I think it'd
like
be
you
a
said,
stretch
three
to win
guaranteed wins.
5 or 4. You look at this schedule.
Probably in some scenarios, no doubt. It's just it like I said, they're not a bad team, but the problem is being average to mediocre in the SEC means you're a bad team, right? Because you're not going to be favored in just about any of these conference games. Um, you're going to be lucky to be even with Auburn or Vanderbilt when it comes time for those games. Yeah, I don't see a path for Kentucky realistically to make a bowl game this year. Is it
Yeah.
possible if they get some breaks? But most likely, you're looking at 4, maybe 5-win team at best.
Yeah, I think 5 wins is even too generous.
Well,
I think this is
yeah,
a 4-8 at best type of team. Again, I think that's where they're pinned into. They might get an upset win or two. Maybe they beat a ranked team. Maybe they just beat one of Auburn or Vanderbilt. Maybe Mark Stoops in his 13th year surprises us, or maybe is it his 13th year? Are my notes right? I don't know. When I got to this point, it's just Kentucky. I don't know what to expect from them. I don't know if they'll just be horrendous, if they'll just be playing bad, or if they can somehow work their way to average. But I can tell you they're nowhere near good. And Kentucky fans
yeah,
will have basketball at least. I don't mean putting them
absolutely.
down like that, but they got a good basketball team.
By the way, it is the 13th year for Mark Stoops. You
Okay,
are
I
correct.
was I was not going insane when I wrote these notes at 12:30 in the morning. Good.
Yep, you're correct. But
Okay.
final point on Kentucky, we've seen this kid as the NIL era has kind of gone on. There's just certain power programs or teams in power conferences that you can tell the NIL side is really getting to, either by way of they don't have the funds or taking advantage of the opportunities there. Kentucky feels like that's the case. You couple last year with what you're bringing in this year, talent wise, it's just not screaming a lot of confidence in what they're doing there of attracting talent to Kentucky. You do it on the basketball side, you've got the history there. And, I'm sure Mark has some words to say about that of, hey, I'm not getting the same support that the basketball side is. Well, that's just how it's always going to be at Kentucky. So you got to find a way to overcome that. Fortunately, for Mark, maybe it's getting close to time for a new change of scenery.
Maybe. We will have to see if Mark Stoops fired watch 2025 becomes a reality. Mississippi State is the last team to talk about. 2-10 last year. It's second year for Jeff Lebby, trying to win his first SEC game this year. Went 0-8 last year. Has Blake Shapen returning as quarterback. Has Isaac Smith as a defensive back. When the only guy to be recognized on any of the 3 SEC teams for the preseason. And you look at Mississippi State, and I see the abyss when I stare into Mississippi State's football schedule this year. And you look at it, and they could start off okay. At Southern Miss, Arizona State's probably lost. Alcorn State and Northern Illinois. But Northern Illinois beat Notre Dame last year. Yeah, you can't put that
Let's
past
say,
you.
don't write that one off.
You can't write that one off. Southern Miss, I keep hearing good things about Southern Miss, and that is in Hattiesburg. There could be something weird that happens in that game. We could be talking about the possibility. Worst case scenario, Mississippi State goes 1-11. Best case scenario
Oof.
is what? 4-8, maybe? 5-7 if things super went your way. I don't think this team can make a bowl game. I just don't think they have that ability in them. I don't really think they have the ability to get 5 wins either, if I'm being completely honest here. And I don't really know how much they can do. I really don't. Because I think this sounds really harsh, but I feel like you split one of Southern Miss or NIU. I don't know why. I just
Oh,
feel like that
oh,
happens. You lose to Arizona State, Tennessee, A&M, Florida, Texas, Arkansas on the road, Georgia at Missouri, and Ole Miss. I don't think you beat any of those teams. I just don't think they can. I think they could be competitive in certain games. I think they'll have a game or two where they can catch someone napping for a while. And I think Jeff Levy will have the ability to make some good play calls here and there, and help with that offense. But I don't know how much he can really do. I don't know how much anyone can really do right now for Mississippi State.
yeah. I'm gonna be a little
You're gonna be
higher.
nicer?
When I say a little higher,
Okay.
be a little higher because I'm gonna give them Southern Miss, Alcorn, Northern Illinois.
Okay.
Let's say they win SEC non-conference dominance, right? Doesn't matter who it is, just non-con dominance. Those are the only 3 games they will legitimately be close to either being favored or even odds, right? They're not going to be favored against any
I'm
other
glad
SEC
you
opponents.
added that. I
Sure, aren't
thought
going to
you
be
were
favored against
just
any.
done with that for a
No,
minute.
no. So that's not going to happen. So they get 3 wins. The question is there any silly upsets they can pull off? I mean, your home games aren't great. Texas, Tennessee, Georgia. You're not one of those. That's not happening. Ole Miss, maybe slightly, but I feel Ole Miss defense maybe is gonna be a little too tough. I mean, that's yeah.
I don't think Egg
So
Bowl shenanigans could save them this year.
yeah, I mean that's and so then you're looking at is Arkansas enough of a dumpster fire that late in the season where maybe you get that one maybe, and then the Egg Bowl because it is say Ole Miss is a dumpster fire. Like there's the only 2 games that I could think you pull off shenanigans. Missouri, if they're bad enough, maybe, but you're not winning all 3 of those games, right? They're more winnable than the rest, but you're not winning all 3 of those. You might win one. If you're extremely lucky, 2. The absolute maximum fairy tale record this Mississippi State team can pull off is 5-7. Likely, you're looking at 3-9, maybe 2-10. Because, like I said, your non-con Southern Miss supposed to be quote unquote maybe something. Northern Illinois did pull off the silly upset last year. Maybe they do it again. Yeah, I'm settling on a firm 3-9 for State. I'm not going to
You
quite put them in the I'm not going to put them in the 2-win tier,
okay?
but just above that, just above.
Well, you're a nicer man than I am because I think Mississippi
I am.
State is the pain tier. There's a reason I put that pain tier there, and it's for Mississippi
Had to put
State
somebody.
because this is somebody had to go there. I think that's unfortunately where Mississippi State is. I see them losing one of those games. I see one of Southern Miss on the road or Northern Illinois at home that you lose. I wouldn't shock me if they won both of those, but I feel it in my gut they lose one of those games, and that gives us a pretty interesting looking SEC where you have 5 teams at the top. I think 4 realistically that'll battle for the SEC title. Tennessee will put up a good fight, but they're kind of just there because that defense it's going to do its thing again. Joey Aguilar has that ability to make things a little bit chaotic. But Texas, Georgia, LSU, I think you're pretty. I think we all agree that's kind of the playoff 3. Alabama probably is in there as well. I would think at least, but some people a little bit lower on them, some a little bit higher. Tennessee, we've already mentioned. South Carolina, Florida, Ole Miss, A&M, OU, all kind of feel grouped together in that same. They could be better, but I really can't see them being worse than what they are in that tier. Missouri kind of could. They could fall into average. Auburn, Vandy, Arkansas, just all grouped together. It's kind of weird. Auburn, Vandy, and Arkansas, and they're all 3 completely different, but they fall in the same tier. And then Kentucky, and then Mississippi State. What a weird looking
I think we
tier
put together
list.
a good tier. I think we put together a good one, Cade.
I think we did.
We were fair to every team as much as we could be. Even the teams we didn't want to be fair with, we were fair with.
I agree.
Look at you, Missouri.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, Missouri fans. I'm sorry, y'all. I've been on Twitter too much last year. That's just it. I don't have anything else against Missouri except just Twitter, the existence of Twitter or X, if you want to call it X, I guess. But just I feel like I should not be the one talking as an OU person, but at the same time, like, come on, don't.
No, I'll take partial blame. It's not even the Missouri Twitter fans. What happened? So I'm from Guthrie,
Okay,
Oklahoma. There's a
okay,
guy
just
who
doxed
was
himself.
in contention for SEC Player of the Year. I say not too long ago. It's been a decade. Kentrell Brothers, defensive end, Missouri, was really good. They had a good team then. That's when they were showing up to the SEC, kicking butt, taking names. It was at that point the fan base turned. So, unfortunately, Cade, you could kind of blame how the Missouri fan base is now because of a guy from Guthrie, Oklahoma.
Wow.
Part of it.
Wow.
I know. That's tough to swallow. I had to watch my own guy do it.
Wow. It's absolutely painful.
Too much. Ugh.
I don't know. The Missouri fans I've interacted with in real life we're nice people.
Real life is different.
Real life is always different than social media. That's the moral of the SEC tier list video.
Online.
That's what a great moral to take away from a tier list video. The internet is not real life. And if you get mad by any of our opinions, you might be taking football a little bit too seriously, which I'm not saying is the worst thing. There are worse things you could take seriously, like tennis, I guess. I don't know. There are other sports you could take way more seriously, be made way more fun of, I guess. But folks, as always, before I continue to ramble on and this turns into a 2-hour video, we're already almost there anyway. Thank you as always. If you made it all the way through this, we hope you liked the video. Please leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment down below. Tell us why we're right.
Leave your opinion.
Yeah, leave your opinion. Even if you think that we're dumb, please leave your opinion and tell us why we're wrong. Tell us why Auburn actually will go 8-4 this year and why we're both stupid for putting them in the average tier. Tell us why, I don't know, whichever your team is, or, even if you do, tell us why the SEC will be bad if you're just an SEC hater. Tell us why your team will be great and make the playoffs. I'm always open to hearing other opinions. Tyler, I know you are as well. Always like getting a discussion going in the comments or just watching it turn to a fist fight. That's also pretty fun too. But folks, again, like, subscribe, comment, all those good things. We'll have it on Spotify as well later on in the week, as we will with all our other tier lists and reactions, and we will get to week 0 previews and all sorts of fun other stuff. NFL, NBA content when it returns down the line. It's going to be chaotic. It's going to be fun. That's sports in a nutshell for you. Folks, as always, until next time, have a good one, everybody. We're almost there.